hopefully everybody can hear me because I'm going to be sitting over here out of the way and we're going to be recording this program. So, do you want to get a level, Wally, or are you all set? You all set?
Wait till they're seated. We're almost ready.
Well,
Okay.
I'm starting.
Okay.
If they're seated, they're seated. So, no, I'm absolutely fine. As long as everybody can hear me.
Wait, Marie.
Okay. The announcements, when you're done here, if you would please sign in. We keep track of people for the purposes of a grant. And Kathy, can you go see where the hat is? I think it might be upstairs because I didn't see it down there about passing the hat. I think it's up in Lee's room. So we're all volunteers at Greece Historical. We don't charge for any of our programs, and we like to pass the hat, except they didn't find it. When you're all done, please go and look at our sports exhibit, which is throughout the museum. And there's goodies on the kitchen table for everybody to enjoy when you're done. Also, the start of this was many years ago. Okay, we're ready? Okay. So, I feel like I'm back in Sister Teresina's first click, 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 click. Okay. So, anyways, when we started this program several years ago, I went to Mabel and Vicky's house and said, do you happen to have any pictures of the farm? My interest in the farm was the fact that I used to live on Beach Avenue, and we would go, my mother would take me in the old 57 Chevy, and, 57 Plymouth, and we would go up to Northgate Plaza to learn how to drive. So I passed this house every day, and it always fascinated me. So when I got over here to Greece Historical, they had a whole bunch of photographs from when it was the Yates Farm, and then I went to Vicky and Mabel, and they had the pictures of the Thayer Farm. So Sam is here today with us, and so here's the end of the Thayers. So if you have any questions afterwards, Sam's here to correct me for anything that I happen to say wrong, and to add things to the program. Just so that you know, there's only been about 9 owners to this property. Frederick Maxon was the first one who came in 1828 and bought the property. Then he sold it to Patrick Fleming. Patrick Fleming built a house at the corner of Ling Road and Greenleaf Road. At that time, Greenleaf Road was called Fleming Road. When it got changed to Greenleaf, I'm sure had to do with Mr. Greenleaf, who had the farm where the Lakeshore Country Club is now. But for years, it was known, in the 1924 map still shows it as Fleming Road. Patrick Fleming died in 1891, and they sold it to his brother, Joseph, and then the property was sold to Arthur Yates. Arthur Yates built the house that's there now, sold it to his son Harry in 1902. Then after Mr. Yates died in 1909, Sam Thayer Sr. bought it, and this is Sam Thayer Jr. So Joe Coco and Patsy Fragnito bought it from Sammy in 1994, and then the Holiday Retirement Group, which started Fleming Point, bought all of the acreage and then sold off the farm portion to the Wegman family in 2007. So that's the entire history of the house and the barn. So originally it was one big farm, then Fleming Point bought it all and then realized they didn't have the money to take care of the renovation of the barn and the house, so they sold it to the Wegmans. Here's the first notice of the map, 1858. This is Patrick Fleming. Owned everything down to Ling Road. This would be Ling Road. And then you see over here that there was supposed to be a school built, number 17 school, which the town of Greece owned, but apparently the schoolhouse was never built. Joseph and Patrick Fleming were both born in County Offaly, which at that time was called Kings County, Ireland. Joseph was born in 1812, and Patrick was born around 1820. We don't have a definite birth date for Patrick. Joseph was the older brother, and he bought the property on the southern part of Latta Road. So you see here the Fleming. Here's the McShay farm, which would be Odenbach's later on, and then Patrick Whitney up here in Round Pond, and then 16, 17, 18 is all owned by the Flemings. And then Joseph Fleming is on the south part, and you're gonna see the house, which is still there today. He's number 15, so he's on the southern part of Latta Road. This is the 1902 map showing Joseph Fleming on the south side. Joseph Fleming has now bought part of the north side of the farm where the Yates Thayer Farm is, and then Patrick Fleming heirs still own everything north of, here's the Hojack line. So they own everything on the north side. Here's the house that's still there today. And the interesting part about this is that if you look at the brick on that house, which is 981 Latta Road, the brick is the same brick as in Mother of Sorrows Church. And that's because Joseph Fleming helped to build that church. And he worked on the Welland Canal, and he helped build the Croton Aqueduct, which was built in 1837 to 1842. The dam opened up in October of 1842. He went up to Canada, worked up in Canada, and in the meantime bought the property here and then built this house when he came back. Being a genealogist, I go and try to find interesting parts about the family so that we could go back and talk about Yates, because Yates was the first one. He's the one who built the house, and Yates is extremely important to the town history for Greece, Charlotte, and for Rochester. Ada Harris died in 2002, and all of these quotes were from the New England Historical Society. She collected everything to do with her great-grandfather, Dr. William Yates. Yates was born in 1767 in Sapperton, England. He was on the staff of St. Bart's Hospital in London, and he became a friend of Edward Jenner. So, now this is hearsay, we can't substantiate it, but supposedly Dr. Yates was the first one to bring the smallpox vaccine to this country when he moved to Philadelphia in 1799. It is also possible that he administered the vaccine to President John Adams, who came through and got the vaccine on his way through Philadelphia. And included in her obit in 2002 is this wonderful story. While in Philadelphia, Dr. Yates struck up a friendship with Judge Cooper, the founder of Cooperstown, father of James Fenimore Cooper. Dr. Yates accompanied Cooper up the Susquehanna River and purchased property. When Dr. Yates and Hannah Palmer were married in 1801, he took his bride back to England, where she was presented to King George's Queen Charlotte. During the bridal couple's year in England, the doctor devolved the manor of Sapperton and his baronetcy in favor of his younger brother Harry. So he sold all of his property in England and moved to Butternuts, which is in Otsego County, New York, by Cooperstown. Dr. Yates arrived at Philadelphia from England. They had 8 children together, he and Hannah. His son was Arthur Yates, a lumber dealer and a judge. Arthur Yates had a son, Arthur, and that's who we're concerned with. Arthur Gould Yates is the one who came to Rochester. Here's the 1850 census showing Arthur Yates and his wife Jerusha and all the kids. And here's one of the litho of Arthur Gould Yates. He was born in 1843 in East Waverly, New York. He died at the Waldorf Astoria. And the interesting part to me was the fact that he was attending a New Society of the Genesee conference, and the New Society of the Genesee still exists in Rochester today. He's buried in Mount Hope Cemetery. According to William Peck, in March 1865, at the age of 22, Yates came to Rochester and accepted a position with the Anthracite Coal Association. 2 years later, he started in business for himself in the coal business, and then he started working in Charlotte. While the shipping interests at Charlotte are now being developed by the immense shipping docks recently erected by him, making Rochester the headquarters for the distribution of vast quantities of coal. In 1876, He started the firm of Bell, Lewis and Yates, and this was for the purpose of mining and shipping the coal. The coal would come from Pennsylvania, and they would ship it up here by the BR&P Railroad. The firm started a Rochester mine in Du Bois in 1877 and became a chartered corporation in 1887. In 1883, the rail line reached Du Bois, and then after Yates became president of the BR&P, he built the trestle at the end of Boxart Street, which you can still see today when the river's low enough, you can still see remnants of that. We've got a couple of photographs of that. By 1915, the Rochester and Pittsburgh Coal and Iron Company was shipping 10 million tons of coal per year. The B&O Railroad took over the BR&P in 1932, and the Genesee docks that we're going to see photographs of is mostly remembered as a B&O facility. The trestle was demolished and removed in 1974. Much to the delight of the neighbors who lived down there. And the spur to the docks was removed. So this shows the rail line through Pennsylvania, up to Buffalo, and then over to Rochester, the BR&P. The trains also carried coal from Pennsylvania to Charlotte, where it was transported to Canada via ship. And everybody here can remember the Coburg Ferry. Well, the Coburg Ferry was primarily meant to ship coal, not passengers. We talked about the passengers that went back and forth to Coburg, but that was a bonus to the coal concern. The Ontario Car Company was formed in 1905 as a joint venture between Yates's BR&P and the Grand Trunk Railway of Canada. The Grand Trunk Railway wanted a faster and cheaper route from Canada for a route for coal from the United States. The BR&P wanted an outlet to ship the northbound coal. So they operated the largest docks on the Great Lakes. Here's the BR&P station on West Main Street, better known as McDonald's. So that's still there today. And those are the original two lithographs of the BR&P. And they built, this was their passenger station on West Main Street. And here's a couple of photographs of the docks. Here's the Genesee River, and the coal trestle be up top. There, if you can see, there's a ship right there waiting to be loaded. And what they would do is they would shake the coal into the vessels, which is why the neighbors hated it, because it would rattle the dishes in their houses when this thing was operating. They got it to the point where it didn't operate on Sunday, which was their only point of relief. There were two trestles, one built by Mr. Roberts in 1874, and then the Yates trestle followed 2 years later in 1876. Now, if you go down Lake Avenue today, and if you write down this number, you can go look at this house. This is Arthur Yates's summer house. It still exists, and you're going to see a huge wall that's built in front of it, and it's at almost to the corner of Harborview Terrace, and you're going to see a wall. Now, the amazing part about that wall is it's the same wall that's in front of the Yates Thayer mansion on Greenleaf Road and Latta Road. But this is, I took these photographs, and these are the tenant houses over to the side, north of the original house. But this is like 8 families. There was just a fire in there a couple of years ago. Here's the 1902 map, once again, showing that Arthur Yates bought the northern part from Joseph Fleming, and then he built the house. Here's the 1908 directory showing that his normal year-round house was at 130 South Fitzhugh Street, and his son Frederick lived next door. So in 1902, Arthur sells Elm Tree Farm to his son Harry. Harry is now living in Buffalo, but we don't have any proof, but we imagine that it was Arthur's money that had the house built in 1902. And once again, Arthur died in 1909. And then the interesting part with he had 3 sons. The eldest son got the house on Lake Avenue. Son number 2, Harry, owned the house, but he had already moved on to Buffalo and started, race horses. So he's south in Hamburg, New York, and they still talk about Yates as though he belongs to that part of Western New York. Harry was a cocky son. He was interviewed in the 50s, and he made this remark about his father, Arthur. Well, we refused to pay the New York Central Railroad an increase of 5 cents a ton on our shipments. We built our own railroad. So Harry married Mary Teresa Duffy in 1892. She was the daughter of Walter Bernard Duffy, and the marriage brought about two of the business dynasty families in Rochester and Buffalo. In addition to Mamie, Walter had 2 other daughters, Constance and Harriet. Connie married Jeremiah Hickey of Hickey Freeman, and Harriet married William Noonan, who would eventually take over after Arthur Yates died as general manager of the BR&P Railroad. So, here's the photograph. Now we're getting into the family photographs. Here they are building the driveway of the house. Sammy, this is the tenant farm house? Okay.
No, that's the chicken house on
That's the chicken
Greenleaf
coop?
Road.
Okay.
Or on, yeah, Greenleaf Road. And those are all
Oh, I'm sorry.
these right here are all the chicken pen with the wire over the top so the chicken hawks couldn't swoop down and grab the chickens out of the runs. Almost lost my life in that chicken house. The tenant man grabbed me when I walked through the back door as a little bitty boy, and he saw me coming through the back door, and they were going to pull down the building, and he ran through the building, grabbed me, and went right out through the back door, and the building collapsed. I would have been killed in the building.
Here's a
That
great photograph.
that
Look.
was behind the house and barns, down the driveway, the chicken house. That was where the big giant barn was. We had 8 groups of barns.
And is this a barn or a tenant house?
That's another
That's the
barn.
big barn, isn't it?
Oh, that's another barn.
It's a barn?
That's on Latta though.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
on Latta Road. That's behind the tenant house.
Behind the tenant house, okay. I knew it was by the tenant house, I wasn't sure. And here's a close-up. Here's a close-up of the same photograph.
Now, this is on Greenleaf Road. Wow, there's 3 tenant houses. And here's the chicken house that I almost died of. The driveway ripped right up between the 2 buildings out onto Greenleaf Road, and they're putting a pipeline in to drain the land.
And you can still see the apples
All right,
in the
we
orchard.
had 95 acres of apples, and when I came in the picture, there was only 15 of them left. Now, this is the pond. Can you visualize this? Look at about 8 acres, flat ground. Mr. Yates comes in, and he digs down probably 25 feet on level ground, 8 acres. And digs all that out to make an artificial lake, because Fleming Creek, one of 2 creeks that went through the town of Greaves, Fleming Creek went right behind my house that I built and fed into this, and then went through two great big openings and dropped down, and then went right down through the middle of the farm out into Lake Ontario. And this is an island in the middle that was rebuilt. And can you visualize this level ground up here? He dug down 25 feet with all spectral wagons with trip bottoms on them. The guy would hit a lever and the bottom would open up and all the dirt would be distributed, and remove 25 feet of dirt, 8 acres wide, to build this artificial lake fed by the creek, Fleming Creek. Can you imagine that? And here's how high the water level was, and would go out through these 2 viaducts, drop down, and continue on through the middle of the farm. This is where I used to fill the spray rig with my father at that level. and you could see where the level of the water was at the bottom of these sluice ways. And this is how much dirt was removed. See all the special made wagons they had to dig all this out with a steam shovel, dump them into the thing and distribute throughout the farm. All this land to drop down 25 feet, and that's the artificial island in the middle of the pond. Here was the manager of the guy managing the building of the pond. I imagine it was Mr. Yates' wagon's in right there.
And there's,
There it is.
it's not a very good photograph, unfortunately, but
Well,
that's the best we could.
Right,
Make it
here's the
look.
creek right here. You can see the creek right here. See it? Feeding, these are ducks and geese and peacocks. And there was the original duck house, little one, and this was right behind the house that I built with an artificial pond. And then there's the island right there in the middle. Can you imagine how big this was? Look at where this goes, way, way down. Move here, right there, is right there at the end is the bridge. See the two sailboats? See the sailboat right there?
We're gonna see a close-up of the sailboat, but if you go today, there's the street immediately to the west of the house. You can go right over the creek and see that exact place
Wow.
today.
Mr. Yates had 8.5 miles of American fence made by American Fence Company. 6 foot high, the top strand was a eighth of an inch, the top strand, the very bottom of the strand, and he had 8.5 miles made to separate sections of the farm from one field to the other. And all the fence posts were painted, and the cap was curved like this, so the top cap was 6 or 8 inches of it was painted different, and the rest of the poles going down into the ground that the fence was nailed to was all pure white. You can see all the fences right along the top of the creek. And of course, in my day, all the trees were growing up in it.
And then here we are with the family, taking the kids out.
This one here is the tenant farm, which is to the west of the mansion. And this is one of the barns of 7 groups of barns. That barn was so big I could drive a bulldozer inside with a drag at it and turn it around on the inside of the barn and come out the same door I went in. That's how big this barn was. And this was my horse barn where I got them, and that was full of hay. This was full of hay. And this is one of the things, see how high the land is? That was originally the land, and how they dug this down 25 feet in depth.
And
This
just so
is
that
where
you can
the
tell,
creek-
that's
this
where
is
the
where
house is.
This
So
is
you're
where
looking
the
to
creek
the
is
east.
coming into the pond, right there. You can see it right there. Yep.
Well, no, I just want to point out that house. That's why I blew it up on the left-hand side, because you can barely see the house in this photograph. So you're looking east towards Lake Avenue. And then here we are. This is a fabulous picture. There again is the house. Okay, and we're harvesting ice in the winter from that pond.
Now, the gentleman last week
Mr. Dodson.
said that they had supplied the city or supplied ice. We had a great big ice house, and I heard in my day that we supplied the city roster with ice out of that pond. We had a great big ice house, which I converted over to a barn for hay by building it. But you can see the ice being harvested and taken over to the ice barn, and then they sold to the city roster for ice. So between our farm and the other farm of last week, between the two of us, we supplied an awful lot of ice to Rochester.
Yeah, and the McShays too. They dug it right out of Round Pond.
Right.
And then the interesting part is that being that the Hojack was right there, they also loaded the ice on rail cars
Right.
and took it down to the southern tier. Harry Yates was a partner in the Yates Ice Company, which was down in the southern tier. So here's some of the outbuildings that are on the Thayer Farm, and Sammy's got some great stories about these.
This one right here is the opening to the barn behind the thing, the hay would go up, as we were told last week, with the tongs were 5 foot long or 6 foot long, and come down 4 of them, take it, go up and trip on that post thing out in the top, up in the very top there. Go through the barn, the hay would be carried in. I don't remember this door, but I remember all the windows. There's the barn that I could turn the tractor around on the inside and come back out. We had the whole second floor was all full of stuff. My horse used to be here, and then where this man is standing with a white hat, we had chicken buildings going down to the creek. Well, I converted the chicken buildings into Chester White hogs. And I'd go to the Genesee Brewery and I'd pick up, with an old truck I had, I rebuilt the truck and put a dump truck on it and went up, talked to the head of the Genesee Brewery and says, all those brewery grains that you dump down into the Genesee River, is there any chance of me getting in those brewery grains to feed to my hogs? And he said, take all you want. And he said, well, how do I get that into my truck? I'll make it into a dump truck. He said, we got a sluiceway. Instead of swinging the sluiceway out to the shaft that goes down into the Genesee River, way down to the bottom, dumps it into the river. He said, well, just swing it around and load it back into your truck. So I used to take and feed my hogs that I built down in the back, Chester Whites, and I had a lot of baby pigs and stuff. And I changed it from a chicken building into a hog, raising hogs. There's the chickens.
Now, the interesting part of this photograph, the reason why I blew this up, is you know where the house is at the corner of Greenleaf and Latta Road. Over here is the blast furnace in Charlotte, which is where the terminal building is today.
Yeah, okay.
So here you are, here's the original photograph down here, and you're looking northeast toward Charlotte. But that's how close it was. There was nothing there blocking.
If you can
The
look
view.
down in this bottom picture, you'll see the wire fences over the tops of the chicken hawks couldn't swoop down and grab the chickens. These are outside the fence, but the chickens were usually inside because the chicken hawks would swoop right down and grab the chickens away. I don't remember this on the outside. Oh, this is unbelievable.
Oh, to be a cow on the Yates Farm, that's all I've got to say.
Can you imagine every single stall had a nameplate on for each cow?
Yes.
Look at this, look at this.
It's
Look at the
in silver
beautiful-
plate.
Look at the beautiful aisles and all the stonework. Each cow had its own stall, and the manure would drop in the ditch. And I put a conveyor belt on this thing so I could run. The manure would go to the far end of the barn. You could see it go up a chute and down and dump the manure into a manure wagon out the back end. I never touched it. And look at it, this was all finished off with beautiful wood on the ceilings and everything.
That's all wainscoting up on the ceiling there.
Gorgeous.
Over here.
Gorgeous building.
Better than our house.
I know.
I know.
I like wainscoting.
And I never had a cow on the, we had 2 cows. I mounted one once in a great while. But the tenant man had his cow for his family, and he'd milk our cow to bring our milk up. But this was a dairy barn, and I never had any cows. I had beef cattle. I didn't want anything to do with cows. We had to go 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and you had to 3:30, 4 o'clock, 7 days a week, all your life, holding tits on cows. I didn't want to do that, so I used beef cattle.
When did that burn?
This is the
Sam?
tenant, I'll answer your question in a minute. This is the tenant farm next to the east, to the west of the mansion.
And this is what it looks like today. You can still
Right.
see it. They've got stones all in front.
Right. And I converted that into 3 apartments, that house. I converted the 3 houses on Greenleaf Road into 2 families. 2 family, 2 family, and 2 family, because they're so big. Now, I want to answer this question. What's the question you asked?
When did it burn down?
When did that big barn burn?
Cow barn.
The cow barn.
The big
When did it burn?
when?
All right. All I remember is this, I was in the house and I just gotten up. My mother was down in the balcony between the first and second floor being the second floor of the house, open. And she's on the landing, and I come down the hallway, I start down the stairs to get down to the landing, and she says, sit down. I sit down, she says, I want to tell you something. Your most beautiful groups of barns is on fire. She said, stand up and look out the window. So I stood up on the landing, and I'm tall, I'm 6'4". I was tall then as a kid. I looked out, and here the barn is roaring flames. Roaring. It's full of hay. I mean, full, I think it was all baled. Now, I had New Holland automatic wire balers, not New Holland string, because everybody used to be string bales. String bales would range anywhere from 85 to 90 pounds a bale. And of course, you use your hooks. A wire tie bale is 100 to 125 pounds, usually around 115 to 125 pounds. I sold all my hay through a broker to Hialeah in Florida, because we had the railroad track running right through the middle of the farm. So I harvested all my hay, baled it with New Holland automatic balers, put it in my barns. This one was full when it was burning up. Now this had this way here, and on the other end, two great big things added onto this after they built the barn, which was for the horse stalls. And when this went up, they figured that there was a bum that came off the railroad tracks, and he was in there and he was maybe smoking, and he set that on fire, because that was on fire when I came down. They had to come back 35 times, 25, 35, 30, who knows, to keep putting out the fire because spontaneous combustion of the barn. 2 to 3 months they kept coming back every day to put the fires back out again. And that was one of the most magnificent barns. See that opening right there, that black part on the second floor? I had a 10-20 tractor, you couldn't stop it sometimes with great big steel wheels on it with crosses on it. And if you couldn't shove it, you'd go right out over the end. And they build a platform to go let the cows go down underneath for the stanchions that you just saw. And I almost went out over the top of the thing because I couldn't stop the tractor. I turned the key off, I tried everything, kept shoving on the clutch, and I couldn't do it. But that was a magnificent barn, and we had two great big sections here added onto it on both ends, and then you had two giant silos at the very end of the barn.
You can see how big it is from the
Cupola at
looks
the top
of
of the
it.
barn. There's your cupola, you can see it right there. There it is, finished, before they put the two in.
And here's
Gorgeous fences.
Here's the nursemaid with the baby buggy.
Right.
So one of the little Yates kids.
There's a thresher,
And you can
that's
see
an
that.
old thresher, you see it with a giant belt on it, harvesting the wheat, chucks the wheat would be thrown into the thresher, and take the grain out of the wheat shed. That's a giant belt that was running there. That's before they
And
added
there's the
on
cupolas when
barn.
they're all done, so that you can see them all built. And just so that you know, when we're all done, take a look at this map. Sam was nice enough to draw us a map of where the buildings were on the property. Because since none of them are there anymore, all we know is the house and the barn that's there. This was a much bigger barn. And here we are, looking down Latta Road before it was paved, towards the house.
That gate right there is the tenant house, going into the tenant house, the manager's house.
And you
Look
can
at the
see
old
the
house.
apple orchard's over here.
Right.
There's Mr. Yates, the kids are in the buggy. And then, I was so fascinated with this. This is one of the very first buildings that I talked about. We used to do for Shalat for a series of 10 years, starting in the year 2000 and going to 2009. We did a yearly history magazine that was, it had all of the businesses in Shalat, and then I would feature different families every year. And this is the year that I featured Arthur Yates and Latta Road, long before I knew the Thayers.
Can you go back one, turn it back one? See that tree right there? See that tree?
It's part of it, she'll talk about.
Oh, yeah.
If you go down to
She's got
the,
a whole presentation on that.
no, all right,
There we go. Let her go.
But, you know, what's the name of the street though? What's the one next to
these
Ripplewood?
urns,
Where that
were
that
never
tree
there
was.
when I was a little boy, but the urns were there when Yates was there. That fence, I remember there's a big fence right there. That is not me on a horse.
This predates you a bit, Sammy.
Only because you didn't have blonde hair, Sammy, that's
He
why.
did, he was blonde.
Oh,
I
yeah?
have pictures of him.
Uh-oh. So now here we are
That's my father.
with the Thayer family, and this is Sam's father, Sam Senior. And his father was George, who was the president of the Alliance Bank, which downtown Rochester, they had, several weeks ago, they had this wonderful story on the front page of the newspaper. I don't know how many, they found a hidden stage in the Alliance Bank building. Well, George Thayer built that building. He was president, and that became Lincoln Rochester Bank. So, it's still in downtown Rochester.
Which later became Lincoln first, then Chase Lincoln, which is now Chase Morgan.
Right.
Then here's the draft card for George Thayer, for Sammy Thayer, saying that his father is George, and 1286 East Avenue is home, and he's a farmer, Elm Tree Farm in Charlotte, New York. Now, I mentioned this last week during the Dobson's presentation. You were known by where you picked up your mail. So it's not that the Yates Thayer Farm was ever in Charlotte, New York, but they went to Charlotte to pick up their mail, because the closest next post office would have been at Barnard, up Dewey Avenue, or at Mount Reed Boulevard by Mother of Sorrows. Those were the three post offices in this part of the town of Greece. So he picked up his mail in Charlotte, and then it said George W. Thayer, and then you see his signature there.
My father was left-handed, and this is where he said,
Backhand.
signed everything backwards.
Yep.
We're on camera here.
Now tell about Ruth.
That's Rudolph Valentino.
And Rudolph Valentino's the one who discovered Ruth. And this is a picture of her in the house on East Avenue.
I actually have the original thing from the beauty pageant.
Do you really?
Yeah, with his signature on it. Yeah.
Sammy, you want to tell the story about your mom? Miss
From what
Rochester?
I understood, talking to my mother, whether it's true or not, I don't know.
Well, his
Mother-
signature's on the
My
thing.
mother used to go over to George Eastman's house twice a month. She was always chaperoned by another party. Up on the second floor, having dinner with Mr. Eastman, who invited my mother twice a month to his house. My mother was a beautiful woman, as denoted later Miss Rochester, through Rudolph Valentino. She said that all the girls were on the stage for Miss Rochester in bathing suits. Rudolph Valentino, you all know the George Eastman Theater. When you got the stairs to the right, you got the stairs to the left coming off the stage, going down into the aisles that go to the back end of the Eastman Theater, where you all came in the back door and then seated yourselves, or you got seated. He came down, as you're facing the stage, the left-hand side, 4 or 5 steps down into the aisle. He walks up part way of the first group of seats before the aisle goes across like this to separate the front and back of the theater. He goes like this, facing down the row of people. And he says, no, next person, usually a woman to the right of the man, no. Goes to the next person, goes right on down the line, comes to my father, he says, no. Points to my mother, right sitting next to him, and he says, yes. He says, please, get out. So she walks between the seat and the thing out, to the aisle where Mr. Valentino is fully dressed. Now, this is, I don't know, whether she's pulling my leg or I've heard stories or it may not be true. She was marched up on the stage and she was told she was Miss Rochester, fully dressed when all the other girls were in their suits. Now, the question is, what happened that Rudolph Valentino would have, at that point in time, have had Rudolph Valentino walk out the stage? Who directed him to do that, or told him to do that? Pick down these people sitting in the aisle, march my mother up on the stage. Was it George Eastman called and said, that woman sitting down in the thing, take her up on the stage and announce that she's Miss Rochester, and Rudolph Valentino had no choice? I don't know how it came about, but she said, Rudolph Valentino said, I'm Miss Rochester, and there she was named Miss Rochester. How do you like that for a story?
Well, I have a little more to that story. We have the actual document of the beauty pageant, and the signatures at the bottom are Rudolph Valentino and his corporation. And it was his company that did the beauty contest.
Mineral lava. was
Yeah,
the name.
Mineral Lava, Rudolph
So funny.
Valentino. So we do have the actual document. But then he was taken down to, then they took her down to Waldorf Astoria for the beauty contest, the Miss America.
Mrs. New York State.
Well, New York went down for the Miss America pageant to Waldorf. Oh, New York State?
Yeah, it's Miss New York State. She didn't make it. I have pictures of the beauty contestants and her. right
Okay,
here
all
with
right,
me.
I'm wrong. It wasn't Miss America, it was Miss New York
You
State.
know how it is in families, the stories.
Now, of course, Ruth was famous in her own right because she was she was a Mayflower descendant. And we've got some wonderful photographs that Mabel had saved for the family for the Society of Mayflower Descendants.
Now, this is my sister's room right there, and my room was right there. But right down through the middle of this wall was a wall. And as a little boy, I used to storm store doors out. I broke the window out of there. My mother and father never knew it. I crawl through the storm window, get on the pillar on the other side like this and shimmy down it. Go down the street and meet the boys in the car, and I was about 3-4 years younger than they were, and we'd go up to the city and we'd sit in a bar up there when I was a kid.
And race how?
Don't get into all that. Come
Come
on. Please, your daughter, where this is going.
Yeah.
That's enough.
I was
Here's
a hellion.
That's enough.
Yeah, we heard about you.
Here's the 1924 map, as I mentioned before. You can see the property here, Latta Road. And here's the new development that was going in. And then the parkway, and then here's Elm Tree Farm. And they went all the way to Ling Road. Here's the 1931 map that shows the original route, which isn't the route that is there today. It was going to be hacked up for the Lake Shore Parkway, going across the property. And you know that it goes in a straight line over to Lake Avenue now. So this is the 1931 map. And you can see sometime between 1924 and 1931, the name got changed to Greenleaf. So, and then Mr. Greenleaf by now had died, but this Clarence Lunt had purchased the Greenleaf property. And there was a big barn over there, and there was Sergeant Greenleaf, the locksmiths. So he came down, this was his summer house. So Clarence Lunt had bought that, so I imagine that that's why the name got changed to Greenleaf Road. Here's a wonderful photograph of the fireplace in the house. And you're going to see when they came time to renovate the building that the same fireplace still exists. The family
That's my
crest is up
father.
there.
That's the coat of arms. We're from the House of Windsor of England. All the coat of arms of the House of England. This is my uncle. My father's brother was ambassador to the Netherlands. and this was a set of
Elsewhere.
Dutch dells that came out of the palace. My mother had the full set, and this was in the living room, I'm sorry, dining room. And on the other side of that, there was a sideboard. Some great big things for the silverware and the linen and everything on the other side. And then George Eastman, at the time my mother and father got married, my father chaperoned my mother many times over to George Eastman's house. He gave my mother and father the dining room table from his house for their dining room. Now, when you took all the leaves and put them in there, you could seat about 46 to 55 people with all the leaves. They had great big leaves that would fit in there when you stretched it out. If you turned upside, lay on the floor and look up at the ceiling, you'd see all these sluice ways where you could keep opening up the table until you got to nothing, and you keep adding the leaves on. And then down at the end of the dining room was another great big gorgeous table for putting all the food on and everything. She's got the pictures right there. But that's my mother standing in front of the.
Here's the 1930 census
Right.
showing Sam and Ruth on Latta Road. You can see on the left-hand side. And I don't know who this family is, the Reese family live next door. So I don't know if they were part of the tenant farm. Yes. And this is a picture of George, the bank president. We don't know where this is. I imagine it must have been up at East Avenue. But look at everybody decked out in that.
That's a lot of people in a carriage.
Yeah.
My grandfather's house is about 15, 20 houses down from George Eastman's house on the same side of the street on East Avenue.
It's beautiful.
I don't know what big car that was. Now, I took the sign down Elm Tree Farm, and if you go down to the auction house for New York City, you'll see the tree that on the 5th floor as you get off the elevator, Elm Tree Farm, is the elm tree perfectly shaped, just as you get off the elevator for that auction house. And I got off the elevator and I looked as I backed up and I says, that's Elm Tree. And I was wondering when we had the auction of all the stuff in the house, that we were gonna get rid of a lot of stuff. My mother's getting real old. And we sold everything, whether the auctioneer, Bailey family, had shills, which I don't want to say this, but had shills in the audience to buy the stuff, and then they re-auctioned it off when they took it down to New York City like 50 times. What they were like that Dutch Dell set, because my mother didn't know the value of anything.
Is that your house?
This is,
That's my home that I built.
and everybody can.
That's my house
You
was
see
solid marble.
SGT on the,
I built my own house. That's the biggest fireplace in the state of New York. That was a tremendous marble fireplace.
and then here's the house that's,
That's the tenant house, right here.
here's the house behind the main house, the little bungalow.
My wife Mabel and I used to live in that tenant house when we started out. Used to be a tenant. There's my father, this is Mr. Baby. And this is the house I told you about, we drove by, that's Mr. Baby's farm. These are all the men on the zoning board. That's my father right there with the glasses, this is Mr. Baby's chair of the zoning board. How he agrees.
Sam died in 1956 and he's buried up at Mount Hope. And among the survivors were Ruth, his son Sammy here, and his daughter Priscilla.
And this is one of the daughters right here. This is my sister's daughter, this is my niece.
Here's the auction, which was done after he died. And you can see
That's actually not the Eastman
That's the
table.
table.
no, that's the small one. This is,
They had legs like this. Huge table.
Oh,
And
there's
then-
the sleigh.
Now that's a copy, I found out, that was on the landing as you walked up to to go from the first to the second floor on the landing, that was right across from the seat that was on the whole length of it, where my mother says the barn's on fire, stand up there and look out, you can see it burning. The fire trucks were coming from all over. This was on the opposite side of where I was standing looking at the fire. It was that Dutch Thayer Z sleigh. And I found out when I took that out to Mount Morris to take it to an auction, that was a copy of a Dutch Thayer Z sleigh, not the original. There's the Dutch thing on the other side of the room where the dishes were right there. See it? That was full of silverware, and these were full of the linens. And then there were two chairs. This was a code, another code wire.
But now on the right-hand side,
Right.
it shows the antique Chippendale oak cabinet had 232 pieces of Delftware. So that's what we saw in the other photograph. And it was a present from Queen Wilhelmina to Samuel Thayer.
Now that's the grandfather's clock. It was right up at the top of the first floor, just as you walked across to go up to the second floor. And that clock I remember so well when I wound it up. Birds would come out and sing, and then they would change the whole, the weather would change and the seasons would change. Giant clocks would do all types of stuff around there. But you had to wind it up, and then the great big things with the big weights on would all operate all at the same time. I only did that once when I was a kid. There's some more
This
stories.
is part of the auction promo.
Now there's my old Cadillac. When I was a kid.
So this is early 60s,
Yeah,
Maybe 50s.
50s?
probably 50.
Yeah, because by the 60s we don't.
That's not me, I'm the horse. But I know that they showed pictures of these things here,
The urns.
but I never had saw those urns, but the gate is still there, and they're closed and everything. Now you have to go down a roadway down in the nursing home to go out on that road, because the traffic was unbelievable. There's the tree.
And here we are.
There it is. And then the gentleman last week was mentioning to you, they used sticks of dynamite to blow the roots out. Well, I took this apple orchard out, but the trees were too old. And took out, blew them out, and the long stories to that. These are the main power lines. Look at all the wires running along that road. This is the tree.
So you're looking west towards Dewey Avenue here. So this would be about Marwood.
Yeah.
Now, that's when they had the Dutch elm disease. The Dutch elm disease killed the elm trees.
And this tree was so famous and so photogenic, people would come from miles around to take photographs of this tree. And it was featured in the annual report for the Rochester Parks Department. There is the cover,
70 foot high.
1917.
About when did that go
This
down?
is the tenant house.
Well, Dutch elm
This is
was,
the tenant house right there.
Dutch elm was early 60s. It was like, we had
No, it hasn't.
The
tree come down.
the Dutch elm disease was early 60s, right?
I don't remember when.
Yeah, because we had one in front of our
The big
house.
one? I
Yeah.
don't know.
We had one in front of our house and the elm tree died.
Well, I remember it from when I was little,
You're thinking.
so it must have been early 60s sometime.
Yeah.
When we lived at the house.
And here, if you look at it, this is taken from the second floor of the house.
Aye,
There's the pond,
aye,
there's the tenant farm,
aye,
and there's the elm tree.
aye.
There's the
Look at the
mulberry
size of that pond. Look at the size of that pond, all handmade.
Now, if you look at the elm tree, I blew up that part of the picture. Up at the top of the hill, you see the spire from Mother of Sorrows Church. That's how far you could see in this photograph.
Now, isn't that the driveway right there?
This
at
is the
bottom
driveway
of
that
the
goes
picture?
by the side of the
That's
house.
mulberry.
I never had that driveway, because I always dragged that field. I never remembered that driveway.
Yeah, the driveway in front of the house. So the driveway in front of the house.
The house you're looking out.
This is a driveway out in the field. This
No,
is
I'm
around
talking
the
about,
house.
yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, there's the mulberry tree that used to be in the,
This one right here, I don't remember that.
no.
And there's,
yeah.
there's spires of Mother of Sorrows.
It's amazing, wow.
There's,
So picturesque.
And this would be the tenant house and the driveway going into the tenant.
that's the tenant house right
And then you
there.
can see right here, the fence.
Can you imagine 8.5 miles of American fence with every one of them with a white post?
Here's the, opening of Fleming Point. As I mentioned before, they bought the property and then figured out that it was gonna cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to renovate the barn and the house. So this is from their grand opening in 2004. And then here we are, and you can see, this is the fence with the urns on the top.
4 urns, one here, one urn here, and one at the very end.
And if you look in the back, this is the barn that's there now, there's the barn that burned in the background. This is the only photograph,
That
That
big one in the
shows-
back.
and this is the chicken coops.
No,
What's this?
this was an attachment to the barn right by the side of the house.
Okay,
When I was a little boy, I remember that barn, I don't remember that attachment was there. Whoever, that must have been taken down when I was a little boy.
okay.
I don't remember that. This is, we're putting the catalpa trees down the driveway. These were perfectly shaped trees, came up, the bottom was all flat like this, catalpa trees.
Yeah.
Perfectly formed like an umbrella, and they were lining the driveway on both sides.
This is from 2003. This was when the plans were coming around, they were trying to sell the house. This is what it looked like when it was boarded up before the renovation. It was listed on the Town of Greece Historic Sites Survey, and they talk about how it was built. And then, the Thayer family sold it in 1994 to Joe Coco and Patsy Fragnito. The Town of Greece Preservation Commission became involved when the developers came in from Fleming Point and wanted to put the senior high-rise on the property. So original plans called for the demolition of the barn and the renovation of the house into 4 apartments. But since the building was eligible for listing on the National Register, it kicked in federal law. A Section 106 review was triggered, and the State Historic Preservation Office stepped in. The barn was saved from demolition, and the inappropriate alterations to the house were prevented. At the same time, the town board set up safeguards to protect the house during the new construction. So, SHPO asked the State Historic Preservation Commission to work as a liaison between the developer and SHPO to move the process along. And most of the exterior work on the house was completed in 2004. But then they started working on the interior of the house, completely gutting it, and over the next 3 years, the Wegman Group took over the building. And we're gonna see, that's what it looked like before.
May I add something?
Yes.
The Wegman family is not Danny Wegman, and it's the family that owns the hotel and restaurant out on
Cuba Lake.
Yucca Lake, thank you.
Esperanza.
David and Phil are the 2 brothers that own the,
Esperanza?
Yeah.
yeah, David and Phil Wegman.
I think that's for sale or something.
That's for sale.
Something, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, here we
They
go.
closed down the restaurant, but they're still using it for weddings.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, whoops, I'm sorry.
You'll have yourself.
There we go, try to use the pointer. There's what it looked like, the entranceway at the beginning. This is before, and then here's the photograph we saw. There's the same fireplace. There it is, all boarded up. And that's what it looked like in 2011.
Was it yellow when you were growing up, Sam? Was it colored yellow, the paint?
Same color.
Yeah,
How wonderful.
I think this is a little brighter yellow than I
Yeah,
remember it as
a
being.
little-
Yeah, it is.
Much,
Mine was
much
more
brighter.
orangey.
Gina Novella is still head of the Town of Greece Preservation Commission. Bill Sowers in the back, he's part of the commission too. Unfortunately, Gloria Latragna was the one who was also instrumental in doing the submission to the National Trust. And she has since passed away, about 3-4 years now, that Gloria is gone. So, as I always talk about in some of these programs, is it might be somebody else's junk, but to us, it's treasure. So if it weren't for Ada Harris, we'd never have the history of the Yates family, because she's the one who saved all the history of that and then donated it to New England Historical Society. And her assortment went even so far as to include autographs and recipe books, bills and diaries, and 2,500 letters. So, but it also had the deeds to all of the Yates family property and photographs. So, here's a picture of Sam. This was done,
5 years ago?
yeah, 2011.
That's me.
And tell them about Harold. I still want to get Harold. He was supposed to come to one of our programs. He still hasn't come, but he lived in the tenant farm.
Harold was the one that would go out with me when he came back every night from his regular job, which was building houses as a general foreman for crews of 8 men, or 8 groups of men for a builder out in Hilton. He'd come in at 5:30 at night, and he'd look on the side of the barn, and if I hadn't pulled the arm down on the side of the barn on the corner, if the arm was down, that means go in and eat as fast as you can and come down to the field that I'm working in, and I've been baling hay all day long, and I've had lined up 6 or 8 wagons with my bulldozer hooked to the first one. And we'd start the bulldozer, and the bulldozer would run straight down with nobody running it, straight down the field, and I would take and hook onto a bale, drag it over to the wagon. I'd wing the bale up like this and throw it 5 tiers high on the top, and Harold would grab it after working nights. Sometimes we worked till 1 and 2 in the morning. And then we'd throw canvases over because it was a pending rain, and Harold would work with me in getting the hay, and he's the one that helped build my house because he was in charge of those 8 crews of men, and built the most gorgeous house. You got a split level ranch walkout basement of the city next to Mrs. Helmwives on East Avenue. And I think my house was much prettier than hers was. Anyway,
No, but you know what? I don't mean
that's
to
me.
interrupt you, but
Yeah.
the Yates Farm on Lake Avenue was bought by Edward Howblight. And
Really?
he started Northeast Electric, which became Delco Products.
Oh.
The Howblights lived in that house
I did not
later
know that.
on. So now that you mentioned it, I didn't know that they came from East Avenue.
Yeah, yeah.
But they bought the Yates house on Lake Avenue.
Now Harold struck up, he moved in from Pennsylvania on the size of barn. He had 8 kids. Harold had a major stroke, and we went down to visit him 2 to 3 months or weeks ago. And Thayer is a veteran. He was the first one that was a tank commander across the Sea Creek line in the Second World War. And now he had a stroke, and it's affected his whole left side. He has to pick his arm up like this. In the Veterans Hospital in Canandaigua. And he's the man that helped build my home.
Batavia.
Or Batavia.
Batavia.
He built my home. There's my wife, she sits right there.
And here's
Here's my
Vicky.
daughter. Who's the one in the middle?
That's
Priscilla, your sister, Priscilla.
It's my mother.
He didn't see her for quite a while.
I'm not sitting right to see her.
And here's an aerial view of Fleming Point
Okay, now you got
and the barn, right behind us.
I did the roofing on that barn. I put a whole new roof on that barn. Oh, what a job that was, just by myself.
And as we come to the end of the program, I've got to thank Sammy for doing the diagram of the farm buildings and supporting this from the time we did this over at the library, 4 years ago? Then we took it to Fleming, we've done a number of these programs, so this is the first time that we've done this program in 2 or 3 years. But all of this is because of the family saving the photographs. So if it weren't for Mabel and Vicki saving the photographs and allowing me to copy them, we wouldn't have these kind of programs. And then also to Al and Bill here, who supplemented the photographs from Charlotte Historic, from the lighthouse. They had several of the photographs that we supplemented the program with, and then Gina Developer supplying photos of the house during the renovation. So we also have a book that chronicles a lot of the information that you're finding here. In fact, if you can hold it up so they can see it. That's what it looks like. And it got it for sale here in the gift shop. It's got a lot of those photographs. So, and then here's the one photograph that I love. This shows the tenant house in the back of the main house. And thank you to the Thayers for preserving all of their treasures. So we owe them a debt of gratitude for saving it for future generations, so people like me can talk about it.
Can I add
So-
one thing, please, Marie?
Yes, you can.
Besides the fact that we want to thank you so much for all that you've done to put it all together for so many places here in Greece and everywhere else. Thank you, thank you. But I just want to tell you a little story to reiterate the importance of genealogy. My mother decided to join the Thayer National Association, and we went down to Braintree, Mass, because the Thayer family started West Point. There's the big monument to Sylvanus Thayer,
Yeah.
and we're there
The
amongst
father of West Point.
we're there with like 400 Thayers, and it was just so funny because we're all walking around going, "Hello, Mr. Thayer. Hello, Mrs. Thayer." And people from California looked like my father. They were 6'4", they had stature just like him, they walked the same. It was just so interesting. And I happened to tag along for something to do that weekend. And in the process of all this, we met this wonderful woman, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she was blind, that wrote the book. And
Oh, yes.
yes,
Yes.
and we found out that the Thayer lineage was all there except our lineage, because they didn't know our lineage in the line of my Thayer family. They had 3 other branches, but not ours. Well, coincidentally, we had taken this book, which is the leather-bound book that my great-great-grandfather had written of all the relatives. And this happened to be the link to the entire line of half of those Thayers that didn't have their lineage. So she went on to write a book, and she was fascinating, and she did it out of the kindness of her heart to put all the Thayers together, which turned into the final big book of the Thayers. So it's just interesting how little stories and little coincidences, if not fate, brings you to connecting the dots of these stories. And just one more thing, the Bank of Alliance, as Marie brought us the article of a couple weeks ago, is renovating. Somebody bought the building. I think it's the bank that's next to Chase Tower. And
Right next door at the bottom of the steps, and if you're facing south, it's just to the right, 15, 20 feet, there's a giant plaque on the wall. Walking down Main Street where the old bus stop used to be, is the Alliance sign right on the building. You go 15, 20 feet and start up the first group of steps, second group, and then all the trees and stuff, and then in the back is Chase Morgan Bank. There's the Alliance Bank. And I remember as a little boy, I used to walk up a set of stairs before we had elevators, but maybe not. And on the second floor to the left, the whole wall was all the tellers. And then when I got older, we went because Mr. Thayer moved down to the corner of Exchange and Main, right across from the Powers Hotel and diagonally across from the, oh God, Powers Hotel and whatever it is.
Four Corners.
Four Corners right there. And I remember watching the gentleman that was an African American going every morning and polishing the brass rail going from the first floor up to the second floor with one landing in between. My grandfather's office, where his president bank was up at the end of the second floor, and he would polish that handrail every day, doing it when I was a little boy, and remembering that. And it was so interesting. I have a lot more stories that not told you. You haven't heard any of the stories. I got enough stuff to go on.
Here's the Alliance Bank.
So this is the Alliance Bank on Main Street. This is the outside, but it looks like this. Okay, so she brought attention to this article of this person reconstructing the building, so it's all gutted and it's up the escalators, okay, and this is the grand railing and everything. Well, we happen to have the picture of the bank inside with the chandeliers and all the finished original, and he's looking for help trying to reconstruct what was there.
So now,
this is just another example
here we go.
of how
Why
we
you
connect
save
the
stuff and
dots.
putting people together, so this
And-
history. And they found an auditorium and a stage hidden behind some drywall. Okay, and it was all because of this, and I'm going, oh, wait a minute, I know the Thayers, hang on. So now putting them, the two of them together, you know, it would be valuable for the person who's renovating the building today. Here's the hat, so we're gonna pass the hat for anybody who'd like to donate.
Thank you very much.
We're all volunteers, thank you very much. Unbelievable, it was like 200 Sundays in members. Yeah, here you go.